Right, this is 8th grade science 12.2, global change. All right, so continuing on with some environmental issues actually now. Yesterday you were supposed to watch some form of a video on pollution, at least 5 minutes long, and then write a critique on it. Some of it you may not agree with, some of it you may. That's just what I'm interested in, seeing a little summary of it, write a little summary of it and a critique. Hopefully you sent me that already. But let's talk a little bit about some of these issues. Acid rain, ozone depletion, and climate change, global warming is what some people would call that. All right, so acid rain is basically rain that was considered more acidic than what it normally is. Normal rain is slightly acidic, about 5.6 on pH scale. So acid rain is less than 5.0, all right, on the pH scale there. And so we've got sulfur dioxide, nitrous dioxide, and all of just different gases that would be considered in the clouds. And so as it comes down or as it washes down, it picks that up as well in the atmosphere. And so, slightly acidic rain will weather rocks, that kind of thing. But if it's a little bit more acidic, then it can cause problems with the plants and forests and all animals and all that. So at first, nowadays, we don't really think of it as much of a problem. And that tends to be what happens with a lot of these issues is hysteria happens and they pass laws and they kind of freak out about it all without waiting for all the we don't have time really all the time to wait for all of these scientific studies to come in. And so sometimes they're just inconclusive, and then later on we realize that a lot of panic for not as much as what it should be. So anyway, they did take some action on some of these things because some of these pollutants that were going up into the atmosphere. So they did the scrubbers. They put the scrubbers systems on lots of plants, like factories plants, not like plant plants. So on the factories, and that would eliminate or reduce emissions. Emissions are like anything that is sent out into the atmosphere. So it would reduce emissions, and these scrubbers were placed onto these factory exhaust systems and things to be able to lessen the emissions there, and that helped somewhat. And then agricultural lime, that could be added to the water to reduce the acid there. And so that helped. Then you had another issue that they came up with, ozone depletion. And so you all understand the ozone layer is what protects us to a certain extent from harmful ultraviolet rays. And so we need the ozone layer. It kind of gives us that whole greenhouse effect and protects us as well. Helps with the blanket there with the atmosphere. And so the ozone layer is important. But when they found a hole in the ozone layers, when they really started to freak out, and then they realized that that hole actually, or that thinning out area, actually had thickened back up way before some of the things that they had said would happen. And so it kind of, that now they realize that it actually kind of goes back and forth. It depletes, and then it gets thicker and thinner and thicker and thinner at the certain areas, mainly Antarctica in that area. But anyway, you can read about, make sure you read this section, okay, because I'm just barely touching on it. Otherwise, I just sit here and read it all to you. You can do that on your own. So the Rowland-Molina hypothesis is what called for that they basically said that these chlorofluorocarbons were causing the ozone depletion and the ozone to thin out. And so they called for a reduction of what they call CFCs, or chlorofluorocarbons, by a certain time period. in this hypothesis. They measure the ozone layer in what they call Dobson units, and that's because of Dobson was the one who kind of headed all this up. And so they measured these that way, and you can see that in the book on 379. So they wanted to thin out or reduce the ozone depleting substances, and so they called for a reduction of CFCs and through the Montreal Protocol. And they say that this ozone depletion was anthropogenic, which means caused by man. Anytime you see the anthropogenic, that means caused by man. So they replaced the chlorofluorocarbons, which were things found in refrigerants, propanes, aerosol cans. Like, so you put let's say you put a certain amount of paint in a can of paint, and then some of it is the chemicals with the chlorofluorocarbons. So then the chlorofluorocarbons will dissipate into the atmosphere, and the paint goes on to whatever it is in this fine mist. So same principle with hairspray, the aerosol hairspray. So anyway, they said, let's do hydrofluorocarbons because it doesn't go in the atmosphere as much. So they replaced it a lot with that, but the problem was is they're a lot more expensive and not always easily attainable. And so so they're constantly trying to find new ways to replace those. But it would kill a whole lot more people if we just did away with refrigerants and freons and that kind of thing altogether. So you kind of have to balance that out, and you can kind of read about what they, on page 381, finish reading about that to see what they came up with on that final study. And then you have global warming, what they call anthropogenic, remember, caused by man, global warming, now called climate change. And basically, if you look at the history there on 381, you had the medieval climate optimum, and that was an area of time that was much warmer. And then you had the Little Ice Age, which was a time that they believed was much colder. And now, you know, they realize that the climates are going through more change than what it is just constant warming. So the reason why they worry about that, they worry about it warming too much, is because it would cause the polar ice caps to melt. These icebergs and things, they would all melt. And as they melted, they would cause the ocean to rise. As they caused the ocean to rise, it would spill onto the coastlines, cause certain islands to be covered up with water, you know, all of that. So that's why they worry about that. And so then they thought carbon dioxide was what was causing this. And of course, you all understand we breathe out carbon dioxide. We can't stop breathing. That would be a bad thing. That would cause more deaths, I think. So anyway, you can read about this, about what they think, and basically they think that it's just all causing, the majority of it is caused by natural things. And so we're just looking for climate change as we look through that. But it gives you some more information and all that. Make sure you read over all of 12.2. And I will talk to you later.